Hi everyone. Good evening to all of you all. I hope you all are doing great. Welcome to the last but definitely not the least session of our uh, boot camp, the Summer of Skills. Today we will be having the most asked for session, that is the interview prep. And who better to get some insights on from than an expert herself. Today we have an industry expert, Ms. Simran Thakur, connecting with us. She has been the PR head at many well known companies like PhonePe, Scale Academy, InterviewBit, and many more. So, without further ado, let us get right into it. Over to you, ma'am.
Hey, hi guys. Just want to do a quick check if everybody can hear what I'm saying and can see the presentation. It's not a long presentation, it's just three slides. But still, I just wanted to check if you guys can see it and then I'll accordingly get started.
Yes,
Okay, great.
yes,
So, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Simran. Thanks, Shreya, for the lovely introduction. I've been working for for 10 years now in the PR and corporate communications vertical. I'm currently with Scalar. I handle external communications and some parts of internal communications and content for Scalar and Interview Bit. Before this, I was with PhonePe and a bunch of other brands that I've worked on, Titan, Triumph Motorcycles, Samsung, Ola, Byju's, lots of stuff in the startup ecosystem. And over the last 10 years, I have changed bunch of jobs, interviewed for many more. So I'm again. I before I kind of get started, I want to call out that giving an interview or just preparing for an interview, there's no hard and fast rule. Everybody's experiences are different. The company that you're sort of interviewing for, every requirement tends to change from role to role, organization to organization. So while there are some basic tips and tricks that you can kind of keep in your kitty, you always at the end of the time sometimes have to just wing it. And the only way you can build that expertise is practice. Like with everything else, practice even in these things are pretty important, because there are some things that will definitely get asked, and obviously some things change depending on what organization you're applying for, what the role is, what the requirements are. So what I've done today is I have put down. Okay, I thought that let's start something very basic. I know it's very basic, but in my conversations, we speak with a lot of young tech, professionals and tech students. And one of the things that we hear a lot with them before we get into the interview tips and stuff, I thought one of the most important things and the best thing that can give you confidence just before you enter an interview or any other thing is just how fluent you are with your conversation. Again, I want to be very clear, I'm not referring to your fluency in language. That's really is not important unless you're a content writer or you're getting into a space where you have to write or speak for a living. What is more important is how can you hold a conversation. Are you confident enough to present yourself in a certain way? So which kind of comes from speaking fluently, and there are tips that you can use. There are some, again, it comes with practice that can sort of help you give an illusion of being proficient in the language without necessarily having a bunch of sort of literature related experience. um, One of the easiest thing is, even if you're not comfortable, for instance, in today's time and world, English has become the language that everybody communicates in. But having said that, in any interview, it's absolutely okay for you to ask the interviewer if it's okay that you communicate in a language that you're comfortable with. If they understand that, for instance, Hindi is quite spoken by a vast majority of people, so you can also, if that is a language that you're comfortable in, you can always ask someone, and if you're okay with that, can I speak in that? That more than anything else, it also sets context for the interviewer that you're kind of taking charge of this conversation, and you're not like a pushover in that sense. So even if they say no, or they don't understand that particular language, it's absolutely fine for you to ask. Some of the other tips that are kind of mentioned here is that take a few. The first for me is that a lot of times we get nervous, and we tend to sort of just ramble on about things, maybe something like what I'm doing right now. The best thing to do is take a breath. uh, it's okay for you to take a few moments, compose yourself, and then proceed to give an answer. So think, uh, think, take a few minutes to think about what you want to say next, how you want to phrase the answer of whatever is being asked, and preferably talk slowly. That gives you a time to frame your next sentence, to articulate what you're saying better, because sometimes when you're in a conversation, you don't tend to remember the next word, or it happens with me a bunch of times that I can't remember a particular word, and I'm just like, oh my god, what was that word? So if you're talking slowly, and it gives you that 1 second or 2 seconds extra for you to sort of maybe come back to whatever you were looking for. That's very important. Plus, a lot of us don't realize that when we're a little nervous or a little excited, we tend to speak faster, and that might cause a problem for the person on the other side to not understand what you're saying, or maybe miss out on some parts, or feel like what you're saying is a bit disconnected. So the best, most easy tip is think before you speak. Speak um, clearly and speak slowly. Take your time. There's no rush. Um, the other thing which I found very important, and specifically for me, is that um, I used to have this habit of especially since I'm in the space of communications, I would sort of try to use very intelligent looking or sounding words when I was having conversations. And sometimes what happens in our excitement and nervousness, we don't tend to use them in the right context, or you're fumbling with pronunciation because it's not something that is could something that you used to. So again, the best thing to do is to kind of keep your conversation simple. Use words and vocabulary that you're comfortable with. You're anyway not going to be using all of that in your daily life, and no one's really judging you on how good your English is. Again, depends on whether you're applying for a content role, then that's a different thing. But in general, kind of you keep with that. There's always also the best thing would be to practice. There are these general questions which we'll come to in the next sort of slide, where practice. There are some general questions that everybody asks, so you can practice those with your friends, with your family, and that sort of helps you stay on track, or you feel more comfortable when you're giving those answers. And I think the best thing, which is very underrated, which I also didn't really ever really realize was important, is to ask questions. Initially, when I used to give interviews, I would never ask questions. I would feel like if I ask questions, they think I'm dumb, or if I ask too many questions, they think like maybe she's all over the place or whatever. But actually, that's not true. Obviously, don't necessarily need to ask like silly things, but it's always good to create a repository of intelligent questions that you can ask your employer. It could be in terms of helping you understand what the role is, what would be the responsibilities of someone who's going to join. Maybe ask a little bit more about the team that you're supposed to be a part of. How is it going to look like? Maybe anything to do with the company. Maybe what their growth plans are. Um, that kind of helps set context that you're interested. You're a smart person. You've read up on the company. You've read up on the team. It shows a lot of uh, how do I say, vigor, or enthusiasm to be part of that. That's really really important. Please do ask questions. It sort of builds an image of you being an informed person. General other tips, just for in terms from a language and communication point of view, I know a lot of us today are very consumed with OTT platforms and social media, and just consuming bite-sized, even news for that matter, with in shorts and things like that. We're very used to consuming bite-sized information. But one of the ways, and it's a tried and tested thing that has been happening for centuries, the best way to sort of build on your fluency language, just having a more poise when you're talking, is to read a lot. Reading kind of exposes you to different ways you can write, you can speak things, or different ways how you can communicate the same thing. It opens your mind to obviously vocabulary, diverse vocabulary, or usage of vocabulary in different contexts. So please do read, whether it's fiction, it's newspapers, it's you know white papers, whatever's of interest to you. Reading is a great habit. Please do make it a point to read and obviously communicate as much as possible with your friends and family, sort of help you build that fluency. So that's something that I thought is very important that we can touch upon. And they say your first impressions are very important. So specifically when you're meeting an employer or you're speaking to an employer, there are very few ways they can judge you as a person. And communication, how you talk, and your body language is very, very important. So that's why I thought it's important to sort of talk about how you can present yourself in a way that you come across as confident and somebody who's fluent in communication. When it comes to let me see. So now that is done. In terms of interviews, in a typical interview, um, an HR or anybody, whether it's a hiring manager or it's your team manager, they ask you questions that fall into these four buckets. The first buckets are your traditional HR questions, which is to kind of get a sense of who you are as a person. They obviously want to understand what are you about, who are you, where do you come from, all of that. Then the second aspect that you kind of get um, um, rated or judged on is behavioral cues. These kind of questions usually tend to kind of ask about uh, what is your personality like? Will you fit into a team in terms of how you look at things, your opinion on stuff, or not rather opinion, rather how do you handle certain situations in a team setup. So that's the second bucket. The third bucket tends is usually around again, it's a little might sound a little vague, but again, it's to kind of understand who you are as a person. What kind of opinions do you hold? Will you gel with the rest of the team that you're supposed to kind of fit in? What is your personality type? Are you a go-getter, or are you somebody who complains, or just obviously there is no 100% way to sort of ascertain that, but there are these cues that they kind of any interviewer kind of picks up on when you're talking about some of these questions. And the fourth, obviously most important one, is the technical questions. I have kind of kept that blank because it again depends on where you're applying or what your role you're applying for. For instance, as an example for me, like since I am in PR and comms, the kind of questions that get asked to me from a technical point of view would be very different to say an engineer or a journalist or a finance person. So those are kind of something that you'll have to figure depending on your expertise. So before I thought we'll delve a little bit deeper into each of these traditional sort of questions. So in a traditional Ashok, one of the most asked questions, and that you will get asked, whether you're applying for the first time, it's your first job, or you've been there donkey's years and you're again applying for yourself, it's a very vague sort of statement. It's an open-ended kind of question, which is, tell me about yourself. It's a loaded question, and it's one of the most important questions I personally feel that you really need to prepare for. Is this question, because usually it's the first questions that gets asked, and it kind of sets tone for the rest of your conversation. So when somebody's asking you, tell me about yourself, you really need to think about what do you want to talk about. You can't kind of ramble on about anything and everything under the sun. You want to portray a picture that showcases you as somebody who knows their shit. They know what they're doing. They So you have to obviously talk about your educational background, a little bit about your whatever projects you're doing, a little, if you have any work experience that. But it's also important to talk a little bit more about your personal self. So things like a little bit about your family background, where do you come from. uh, for instance, my dad's in the army, so the fact that my dad's from the forces, and the fact that I've been able to, I've studied in like 10, 12 schools over the course of my education. I talk about that, and I kind of bring it up in the conversation, because that kind of shows that as a person, I can handle change, or I can handle, being thrown into a situation that I'm not comfortable with. So in your personal life, in your professional life, you'll have to kind of figure out these, things that you can talk about, whether it's hobbies. For instance, you're a creative person, you like to paint, or you like music, or you can write. Again, that shows that you have interests outside of work. You're dedicated enough to pursue these hobbies, because these kind of hobbies take time and effort, and you have that drive in you. So it's very important for you to pick on what it is that you will talk about. So whether it is about your professional goals, it is about, even from an educational point of view, if you want to call out, it's very important for you to call out, for instance, not necessarily which college you're from, or what degree you're doing, but what did you learn there? For instance, if you're an engineer, like for me, when I did my masters, I did it from Symbiosis. Why? I studied what almost every other person who's going to be learning comms or marketing would study. Um, I felt it's important. I thought that the whole part about where we were doing multiple internships. So it was a mandate in our college to do internships in every between every semester, and there were different kinds of internships. It was, you had to do different things, and so I took that as the main learning for me in my whole educational qualification, and I kind of brought that up, that I was able to learn these things through my degree, instead of just focusing on, okay, I did MBA or that from XYZ college. You kind of talk about, I was part of this institution, I was taught by these kind of people, I had the opportunity to work or experience the XYZ things that have helped me become the person I am today. So it seems like a loaded question, but it's actually a great opportunity for you to put triggers in the opposite person's mind. So the moment you start talking about, Acha, I work here, or I worked on this small project, or I met this person and they taught me this, that kind of gives the interview some idea of what you're like, and they kind of pick on those and ask you more questions on it. So you're kind of moving into a territory that you're already comfortable in. So it's very important on how you frame uh, the answer to this, and what all points you need to sort of include into it. So do give it, like my personal, like over the years, I've kind of developed some pointers. So every interview, depending on the company I'm applying for or the role I'm applying for, I kind of put down pointers on projects, or maybe some person that I know who'd be relevant for this organization or this role, and kind of call those things out when I'm talking about myself. That's very important. Please do that. The next big important question usually people ask is, why do you want to work for us? Why us? Why not somebody else? Again, a lot of us have a tendency to go on this, long speech on how great the organization is, and it will be great for you on your CV, and there are a lot of growth opportunities, and blah blah blah. But again, avoid doing that. Align why you want to join the organization with the mission of the organization. For instance, in Scalar, our mission is to fix tech education for engineers or younger professionals in the tech education. We feel that the college some of the stuff that you learn in college, and people who pass out of college are not necessarily trained for the jobs that they're supposed to be working for. So we are an upskilling platform, and our whole focus is to upskill people. And the whole theme on that is that, no, we want to fix the education system. So when you're so When you're applying for a company like Scalar that is in that space, you have to sort of tie in why do you want to work the organization, why you want to work, because you want to be part of a mission driven company. They have a goal, and you feel you are aligned to that goal, or you have interests in that field, and that is why you think you're a great fit for the organization. You can always mention that the organization is doing great. You heard from people in the industry that they're doing some good work, and you want to be part of a team that's doing this kind of a work. So you have to kind of in slightly I don't want to say you have to butter up the person, but I mean you do have to obviously talk positive about what they're doing, but it's not just like blindly saying, oh, great company. Like a lot of people, why they want to work in Google is very like, you have, I go to office and I get access to whatever amenities in the office, and that's why I want to join Google. But Google's not going to hire you just because of that. So you have to sort of align. So try and avoid that. Don't go for blind or blank. This company is good, so I want to join there. Fit yourself or what you offer as a person, as a professional, into the organization's mission and vision, and portray it like that. That works great. That also shows that you've done research on the organization and you know what they're doing, and you're not just some, like, it kind of helps you distinguish yourself from the others, because a lot of people have the tendency to say these things in those interviews. The next kind of important question that always gets asked is, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? I have a It's a rule. My rule is 2:1. So if I'm saying two strengths, then I have to say only one weakness, and try and think of uh, like the like your strengths can be anything. You're a great leader, or you're very good with impeccable with timing. You set if you set a deadline to yourself, you achieve it, whatever. But use examples. Give it. It could be basic examples, from your college experience, a project maybe you did, or assignment that you did, anything. It could be anything, but back it up with examples. Why do you think that is your strength? Like for me, it's change, because I grew up in a fudgy environment and I changed my schools every 2 years and I met a bunch of different people everywhere I went. So that has kind of helped me develop a personality where I can fit in anywhere, or I'm okay with change if I own it. So you have to give these examples to set context on why do you think that your strength is. And in terms of weakness, find something um, that something like small or minor. Don't make it sound like, oh my god, it's a big weakness, and like saying things like, oh my, it's hard for me to concentrate on my work. That is weakness, and a lot of people tend to feel that, complacency. But you don't shouldn't be talking about that. Pick up something small, that maybe I take a little bit more time to deliver on projects because, and then they say why would that be? So it's because I have an eye for detail. So I tend to sometimes get lost or get a little occupied, or caught up in the finer things kind of. So those kind of things that that doesn't show you as somebody who's lax, or just not what or lazy or whatever. It's just that you have something. Your weakness should somewhere be related to your uh, strength to an extent. I don't know if I'm making myself clear here, because it can be a little vague, but if you kind of understand that kind of focus, see if you can do that. Um, but in again, have an answer ready, and this is something that everybody will ask you. This answer doesn't need to change from company to company. So even if you have to write it and learn it and just practice it, do that. It doesn't matter. Everybody will ask you this. That's fine. I don't know if the fourth question is relevant for a lot of you. The fourth question, why are you looking for a change, is relevant for people who already have work experience or they're changing to another company. I'm not sure if it is relevant for you, but it's a very commonly asked question. And eventually, even if you are joining as a freshers, and there will be a time where you will move from one company to another. Whenever somebody asks you that question, never, ever, ever, ever blame your current employer. Never. That is the biggest red flag. Nobody will hire you if you say that, my boss is an asshole, or this company is going nowhere, I don't know what to do, and that's why I want to shift. It's a big red flag. Never say that. Why you're looking for a change? The first answer is always, I'm not actively looking for a change. I got, or I found this great opportunity from wherever it is that you found it, your friend found it, or you found on LinkedIn, or a recruiter reached out to you, whatever. I happened to pass by this opportunity, and I feel like the responsibilities are in line with what I want to do as a professional, and I feel like this could be the next step in my journey in the career. That kind of an answer works. Never ever bitch about your boss or about your previous company. That doesn't uh, work well at all. Please do avoid that. So that's very important. The next very important question would be, it's kind of similar to your strengths, different in the sense that it's sorry, the question is, why should we hire you? It's very common. And the simple answer to that would not be to really talk about just your strengths. It would be to also highlight whatever it is that your expertise is, what your skill is. Maybe if there are projects, or things that you have worked on, or interviews that you have done, or you have some kind of a work experience that might be relatable to your role that you're applying for, or it is in in line with your interests. So obviously you talk about how good you are, what your skills are, but you kind of link it to how the company is doing, and that is why you want to work there, or why that's why they should hire you. You're a great team player. And for instance, in Scale Up, one of the reasons when I was asked this question, and why do you want to, why should we hire you, my first kind of answer was that I've been in the startup ecosystem for 5 years now. I know how startups work. I understand what. So my job, I don't know if you understand what PR does, but one of my biggest requirements as a person is to ensure that whatever company that I'm working for has a good relationship with media, so journalists, news websites, all of that. So because I've worked in the startup ecosystem in the last 4 or 5 years, I have those relationships with the people that are relevant to Scalar, and I can bring those relationships to you. So, that is why you should hire me. Or the other thing you can say is that, I'm a go-getter. I'm somebody who can take charge of a project and, work on it end to end. I'm somebody who can take that, depending on the role that you're applying for. So you can talk about these things. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a strength of yours. It can be a personality trait. It could be your internship. It could be your experiences, or just your goals that have to sort of align. It's slightly more wider than just strengths and weaknesses, and it's a very commonly asked again question. And one of the most biggest questions on planet Earth, and that everybody asks, a lot of people ask, is, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line? Now, with COVID and all of that happening and things changing rapidly, you can always say that you're not sure how the world will be 5 years down the line, because the pandemic has taught you otherwise. But before that, uh, usually people would expect you to talk about um, your goals like, for instance, you're an executive today. So, 5 years down the line, I see myself managing a team of 5 people, or, I see myself heading an XYZ division, or I see myself working with the CMO or the CTO or the CFO directly, and kind of contributing directly to that kind of role. So it doesn't necessarily have to be very detailed in terms of, I want to do XYZ role. It has to be slightly forward looking, where you talk about bigger goals about, from it's, whether it's management, whether it is bigger projects, whether it is working with the key leadership, whether it is working in a key demographic of location or region. So those kind of things need to be highlighted more than anything else. It's not a question that has like a real answer per se, but they just want to kind of, the purpose one, the reason why this question is asked very often is, they kind of want to know that you're in it for the long haul. You're not just joining, or you're not just in this profession, not just even in this job just for the heck of it. You do see yourself doing something or making something out of yourself. You have a plan to stick around in the organization, because retention of employees is a big deal for most employers. It's People find it very hard, because people keep jumping from one job to the other, and maybe in in to look out for more money, or like better opportunity, whatever. But when you sort of talk about your goals, they can also figure out where you fit in the organization. Do you have if you have these goals कि अच्छा मुझे 5 लोगों की टीम लीड करनी है 5 साल में, then they can also kind of chart that graph for you on how you can go about achieving that. That kind of shows your enthusiasm and vigor to be part of uh, an industry or an organization. Um, Again, it's something that gets asked on all questions, and you don't necessarily need to keep changing the answer, so you can always have a ready answer left and sort of practice on that. Next set is a little more vague, which are more behavioral questions. So there are different ways that these questions are asked. They talk, they can ask you about leadership skills. They'll be like, talk about your skills, or talk about your time management skills, or talk about your team player skills. They'll just you can they can it can be any kind of work related sort of skill, soft skill, basically any soft skill that you have or does you're expected to have, and they kind of ask you to talk about why do you think you have that skill. So why are you friendly, or why do you think you're a great leader, or why do you think you're a great team player, why do you think you stick to time limits, etc. So these are very dependent on a person's behavior and how your behavior will be with the team. And again, so these kind of questions, you'll again have to build some answers or build some examples on why you think you're like that. So from a leadership point of view, it can be, you if you're in college, you were part of a particular community, or you were part of a particular group that you led some activities, you were a class representative, whatever examples that you can kind of come up. The idea is for you to share about what are those things that you have done. It doesn't mean internships or projects. It can be anything. It can be in your personal life. It can be in your interest levels. It can be in your hobbies. Just things where you think you were a leader, or you think you were a team player. Maybe there was a situation where there were a group of 5 people. You guys were taking a trip, and people were not agreeing on something, and you kind of maintained the peace of the group. You kind of got everybody to um, somebody wants to go to Baga, blah blah. Somebody wants to go dancing, somebody wants to go, they want to sit on the beach and just chill. So whatever, like you're the mediator in the group, and you calmed everybody down. You got them on the same page, and you all decided you had a great time, and you finally went on whatever you did XYZ thing. So that's a great example of both being a team player and a leader. You were able to get the group together. You were able to come to a conclusion. You worked with the team. So these can be any kind of examples. Just it has to be something personal in your journey, and you talk about whatever is being, like for instance, leadership or time player or whatever, and build examples to it. That's another common question. Uh, the second question which is mentioned here is where they tell you to talk about an instance where, say, you made a mistake, or an instance where you think you succeeded, your whatever you were working on, you succeeded in that activity, or things like that. So it's again behavioral in the sense that they want to understand how did you react to a certain situation, how do you handle a crisis, how do you think through uh, any kind of issue that you may feel, or how do you react when something's going right or how something's going wrong. So again, these are questions to kind of understand you as a person. How will you react? What are your reaction times? How do you react to people? What are your engagement levels like? Will you fit into the team that you're supposed to be part of? So there's not a lot of preparation that you can really do about these questions, but still some of them are asked very often. So it would be great if you can kind of build some examples from your personal life or professional life or college life, and keep them sort of ready. Then the third important, and this is actually not asked in all organizations, um, opinion cues. So, for instance, in smaller organizations, maybe startups or even like smaller MNCs and all of that, not necessarily they ask you these questions. But companies like Amazon and Google, even Flipkart Group, they have a section where they ask people about their. In fact, there are some organizations like when I was applying for PhonePe, they actually sent us. It's called a psychological. Um, it's like I don't know what exactly the name is, but it's like a psychological test They send you it's like a Google sheet, and it has different questions. It basically asks your opinions. You know, it's like a long 30-40 question, and the answers usually are between, I agree, I don't agree, I somewhat agree, I disagree, I completely disagree, and there are these random statements where you sort of share when you share your views. So again, the idea is to sort of map your psychological sub, like I wouldn't say subconscious, but like a psychological way of thinking of you. So then there are these you're kind of grouped into, depending on choices you pick up, you're kind of grouped into a type of personality. Your personality is this, or your personality is that, and then your personality type is matched with the people in the organization or the work culture type, and then you're kind of seen whether you are a fit or not. So these are also opinion cues. So they want to understand what your opinions are. Are you very, are you very strong-headed? Do you have very strong opinions? And again, in what kind of situations are those strong opinions? Well, obviously there are some roles or some organizations where you really need to have strong opinions because that's what it's required. But then there are also roles where you have to sort of play the ball. Yes, it's called the psychological assessment. Yes, thanks, Vishnu. I couldn't remember. Even I, they can be. So there's nothing you can't prepare for those. They just want to sort of check what your subconscious reaction is, and even if you try to prepare for those, it really is not something that you can really predict at that moment how you're feeling. You kind of tend to answer on that. Some of the questions that I've heard from my friends and some people I work with that get asked are, things like, uh, what motivates you as a person, and for you, what, uh, when you start off in your career, usually your motivations are money. Because you obviously paid a lot of money for your graduation or your education quality, and you really want to kind of make that money back and you want to be independent and kind of work. But after a few years, there are a lot other things that sort of motivate you. It could be the work culture in the organization. It could be the kind of company that you're working for. Whether it's that whole happiness or that kick that you get. That I'm working in an Amazon or I'm working in a Google. Vis-a-vis, I'm working in a smaller startup. That's a big thing. It's a self actualization goal. So there are different things that motivate you. It could be work-life balance. You're the kind of person who doesn't want to work 15 hours a day. You value your personal time and all of that. So these kind of questions, sort of just to kind of get a sense of um, how the organization works, what are their work culture motivations, and do your motivations and your sort of fit with that. Another important people a lot of ask you is about growth. What is growth for you? Like personally, like a lot of people chase designations. They want to be a head of something. I want to lead my department. I want to have 15 people working under me. Then there are people who are, for them, growth is money. I get 30% hike, 40% hike, 50% hike. I don't care. I can be a manager for 50 years of my life, but I should get money, keep getting money. So that can be growth for someone. For somebody, it can be growth from smaller company to bigger company to bigger company to bigger company. Growth can be you're working in India, you want to go to the US, you work in the US, or you go to the Europe and you work there. So again, it kind of talks to you, share how you respond to these questions or what your views are. Help the recruiter understand who you are as a person, and what are your views like generally in life. And again, like I mentioned earlier also, I'm not really going into technical cues because that can be very, very different from from every role to every responsibility to every organization. That is something you'll have to sort of depending on the organization and role, like do a little bit more research and build on those. So I'm not really getting into technical questions. That's something you'll have to figure out. Sorry, a little later. Uh, but yeah, um, so this is kind of it actually. What I had thought of to talk about something very generic, something that kind of gives everybody a sense of what they should be doing. If there are any questions you want me to talk to you about something specific, I'm open to that. Also, I hope this was useful and I was not just rambling about nonsense that doesn't concern you guys. So open to suggestions, questions, anything that you want. I can answer those. Also, there is this video. I don't want to sound very brand promotional or anything, but it's actually a very interesting video. Something that we created at Scalar, we created for our learners. So there are some parts of it which are a little technical, but the others are very generic. You can talk about all the pointers that I kind of mentioned here. They are taken in that video. It's a long video. Whenever you guys you get the time, if you get the time, if it's of interest to you, please feel free to go through that. The instructor who's taken this session has also kind of shared some sample answers to some of these questions that might help you. Just sharing it in case anybody wants to have a more deeper dive into this. Anyway, sorry. Any questions that I can answer? Anything I can help anybody with? Please feel free to ask.
Please unmute your mic and ask your questions, or else you can put it up on the chat box also.
Yeah, anything's fine. Absolutely okay with anything. Navigating salary question. That's a good one. I'm completely skipped my mind. I should have probably mentioned that. So usually, I'll tell you, salary. Unfortunately, even today's time and world, there is most organizations don't have a parity. So it's not. Like even within an organization, like I remember a couple of years back, I joined this organization. I was at an executive level, and somebody was an assistant manager level, and they were getting paid less than me. So unfortunately what happens is your current salary determines your next salary. So if you're, for instance, earning 10 lakhs right now, then typically an organization gives you 20 to 30% hike. That's an average. There are obviously organizations like Amazon and Google's and your Flipkarts, or those bigger Ubers, the bigger organizations that can even give you 100% hike or 80% hike. um, but the thumb rule is you should minimum, when you're changing a job, your minimum salary hike needs to be 30%. Always, always, always ask for that. And if somebody is not willing to give you that, please do some research. There is a reason why they're not giving you that. That's one thing. Personally, even I find salary negotiations can be a little bit tricky. You feel a little, you really want this job, but if you ask too much money, what if they don't give it to you? Don't believe that. Uh, if you have the talent, if you have the right role, or whatever experience, you will get the right opportunity. Hold out a little bit. Like I said, 30% is a thumb rule. Always ask for 30% hike. And in conversations, I think the best is for you to be honest. It's something that I've experienced. Like when I was applying for Phone Day, they offered me a particular salary, and I felt it was not enough, or that I felt like I wasn't getting the right hike. I had a conversation with them, very fair. There's no need. I cited some other examples that my friends are working in whatever XYZ company, and they get, with the same experience, they're getting so much money. So I feel like I'm getting underpaid. So while they did not match the salary exactly to what my friends were getting, they were kind enough to increase it to. So they'll always sort of come back. You'll always get a better hand if you have a conversation. So have a conversation. Don't feel shy to say that you feel like you're getting paid less. If they can't afford it, they will obviously come back and say कि नहीं, हम नहीं दे सकते, इतना ही है, this is our budget. And in that sense, that case, you can come back and decide whether this job makes sense for you or not. Even as freshers, I feel like um, there are two ways to look at it from a fresher's point of view. Either you go for the money, or you go for the brand name, or you go for the role. For people, there are some people who are lucky who get all three. So you get the money, you get the brand name, and you get the role. Um, if you're not getting all three, my suggestion would be choose the role, not the money, not the company. I'll tell you why again. It's my personal experience. If you, and it's something that we even bought it when we are in Scalar, that if you have the right exposure to the right kind of work, you're running the right skills. मतलब आप जिस industry you're in, if you're running the right skills and getting to do the right kind of work, then money will eventually come. It might take a year longer than somebody else, but always, always make a decision basis what is your interest level and is the job good. And I'm telling you personally, it has not worked out for me. When I passed out of college, I got placed in Reliance Broadcast Limited. I got a TV sales job. They were paying me 40,000. This is in 2010, 12. Sorry, they were paying me I think 38 or 40,000 per month for a pure play sales job where I had to go from I was based out of Bangalore that time also, and I had to actually go from small, and I was for the radio division of RBN, so 92.7 FM. So you actually have to go to all local stores, go there, pitch your radio station, and get them to give you sales, and you have a target of whatever itna crore ka aapko business lana hai in every month and all that. I took it. I didn't know too much about that job. I just took it because, oh my god, I'm getting a lot of money. Let me take it. Eventually, we'll figure it out. I couldn't even last 3 months because it was not something that interested me. I'm not meant for sales. Then I actually eventually quit it after 3 months, and I started working in a PR agency. And I got, I think, 19, 18 or 19,000. That was my first salary. But it took me some time. I worked. I really enjoyed the kind of work I was doing. It was exactly what I wanted to do. I was learning. I was working with good brands. I was learning a lot of new stuff. And eventually, within a year or 2 years, I was able to sort of come back to a point where I'm working with great brands. I'm getting good money, and I'm doing the work that I like. So it's a bit tricky and it's a bit personal, but take a decision basis what you really want to do, because eventually the money will come. And when you're doing salary negotiations, thumb rule, ask for 30%. So if you ask for 30%, usually all good companies will give you 30%. Worst case scenario, some of the older, um, legacy type companies may not give you 30, but they'll at least give you 20, 25. And if you're lucky, you get into companies like Amazon or Google, or some of the bigger ones, Uber, Ola, Flipkarts, etc. They'll probably even give you 100% hike, 70 to 80% hike. I know people who've done that. But again, don't make a decision basis just the money. That would be my suggestion. I hope that was helpful.
Hi Simran, Vishruth here.
Hi, hello, hi.
So I have a question regarding the JDs. So in
Hmm.
a lot of the JDs, we see that the job which is meant for freshers, it
Yeah.
has a year minimum experience.
Sorry, Vishwat, I lost you there. Am I the only one? Can I?
Always,
Sorry, I've lost you. Can you kind of repeat that? You said then in
sorry.
JDs. I lost you in between. You were saying something about JDs, right?
Okay. Yes. So in normally what happens is when I go through the JDs on LinkedIn, I
Yeah,
see that the jobs which are meant for freshers, they
yeah.
have a requirement of experience of roughly 2 or 3 years. Now, why is that? Or is it something like it's the same template that has been copy pasted, or is it requirement specifically for the product roles? Now, coming from a product management point of view, many of the I understand that to get into product management, you require a basic technical experience so you can
Some
handle a
amount.
tech team.
Yes.
As
Yeah.
so that is necessary for the APM role. But even when they mention it as freshers just out of college, but that is not the case even that time, right?
True. So there are two sort of there are two three things that happen. One of them, obviously, like you mentioned, there are some roles that kind of require a little bit of work experience. Again, work experience differs from organization to organization. There are some who consider projects and internships also as work experience. So even if you're just passed out of college, but if you've done a good internship in the role that you're looking at, or you've done a good project in that particular field, then that also counts as work experience. The other thing also is a lot of times, and I don't want to, I kind of want to call it out in the working environment also, is a lot of times the JDs are just cut, copy, paste from here and there. You know, it's not necessary that you need to have that kind of, because I personally, even I, in my own experience with people I know, my own friends and whatever, we have hired people who had I mean, the JD called out for 2 years or one year or 2 years of experience, but we've hired people who've been freshers, but they were smart and they had some. Even if they didn't know the right things, they were smart enough that we could mold them in a sense. The thing is, you have to understand from an organization's point of view. Even if when they're like, obviously there are some that go to colleges and do campus hiring, but apart from that, when there are the other kind of roles, the smart shorter roles that open up, one profile, two people, three people, that kind of roles, it's always preferred that you find someone who has some experience, because then the teaching part of training part of those people becomes less. So that's why they might prefer somebody who has 1 year of experience, because it's easier to get those people on board. They already have some understanding of what needs to be done, than freshers, because then you have to train them from beginning. It's an industry wide problem, and it's not just limited to tech, or that's there for marketing and finance and ops and all kinds of roles. Unfortunately, we haven't really fixed it as an industry in itself. But again, even whenever you're applying, and this is something I've also realized that I've experienced, that a lot of times, initially I would not apply to a role because I felt like, okay, I don't have enough experience. But, but, please apply for it. If you think you read ki jo, whatever the work is required, you think you can do it, or you've done something like that, please apply for it. Because 1 or 2 years here and there is, people make adjustments for that. When I was joining Scalar, I had 8 years of experience. They were looking for somebody with 10 to 12 years of experience, but they were open to, because we kind of connected and we had the right what do you say, vibe between me, between us. It didn't matter. So please do try. And another thing also is, a lot of the again, a lot of openings or like roles that you see on LinkedIn and all these websites, Naukri websites and all, sometimes they're dated also. So if you can find the recruiter who has posted these roles, it would be easier to have a direct conversation with him or her, or somebody in the organization, and get confirmation whether that role is even available or not. Because a lot of, again, it's a trade secret, please don't tell anybody. Actually, tell everybody. A lot of times, jobs are also posted just for the purpose of SEO optimization, which basically helps to kind of get the brand name up in search engine, in social chat platforms, and in on Google. So there are times when a job post has been shared on some platform, but it may not be live, or someone has forgotten to close the opportunity, and somebody's already hired. So there are some mistakes like that also. But don't apply for it. Don't think twice about, even if you don't have experience, apply for it. There are a lot of times when that happens. I hope that was again helpful.
Thank you, Simran. Yeah, it was fantastically clear. So I have another question regarding the resumes.
Sure.
So the initial screening of resume is obviously done by the ATS. So is it that's correct, right?
Yeah. Actually, it differs from companies to company, but yeah, a lot of times it does done like that.
So when the time comes for the face-to-face interview, do you all prefer a resume which is the same with the ATS compliant resume, a one pager format, or some kind of a unique thing?
So, like I'll tell you what I personally like. I personally like if the document is brief, like it's one page. But I also like that it's creative. Like I like colors personally, so I like people who have colorful, bright resumes. But preferably, like one page is a bit much. But at the max, 2 pages is fine. My suggestion would be, don't go beyond 2 pages, because usually when people are hiring for, especially for like smaller, like if there are even larger openings or small, there is not a lot of time for you to there'll be like 50 people resumes you have to go through, and you're technically only applying for two or three, sort of recruiting two or three people or whatever. Like the ratio is always different. Like you're applying for a small number, you're recruiting for a small number, but the number of CVs you get is massive. So it sounds it sounds counterproductive, or it sounds even mean like that, but your CV has to stand out. So uh, if the CV is creative, or you've written stuff that is important, like again and again, another suggestion is put the critical stuff right on the top. Talk about your education and like all of that, uh, hobbies and link all of that towards the bottom. On the top, you talk about things that you want to highlight. The first two, three, first half of the page is the most important page because that's the first thing the person will read. So put a nice picture of yourself, small picture, so they know who you are. They kind of see, what the person is, and talk like put important highlights there. And then you can go into detail maybe in the second page or later. But like for instance, if you're applying for scaler tomorrow, you want to apply for scaler in my team for that matter. Then for me, it's important that you should have worked or you should know something about the startup ecosystem because obviously you're entering a startup ecosystem. Two, it would be important or great for me as a person or a team as an organization if you understand software engineering because that's our core business. So if I can see that in the first whatever half of paper that you work with the startup ecosystem, you work with some of these younger brands, or you are a software engineer by profession, or you are a software engineer by education, or you worked for on that kind of business, or you understand tech as an industry, then that's a brownie point for me, and I will immediately kind of see like, so this guy makes or this girl makes sense to me. So I know it's hard for you to like edit your CV for every role that you're applying for, but as a thumb rule, the initial half of your page or document needs to have highlights of the important things, whether it's important internships or important projects, or anything that you want to call out you think is your is why they should hire you. So call it out in the beginning, and then you can have a two-page also. That's fine. That's not a problem. Preferably one page, but if you can go to two pages, but don't go beyond two pages because then that's just too much. Also, a trick. I don't know if you guys know of this website called Canva. I'm sure you do. You guys are much more tech um,
Yeah,
savvy
we do.
than I am. Yeah. So Canva has these really nice sample format. You don't need to copy the same format, but it can give you an idea of how you can structure your CV. Like I personally, my CV personally is not on Canva. I made it on a PPT actually. I changed because I wanted to have a specific length and breadth, and obviously there's a lot more you want to talk about. But I kind of went through Canva to see what are the different ways that you can present how I talk about. So you can try that, and like presentations. Like PPT, the word PPT, and even if you're an Apple, that the entire PPT deck. There are a lot of different things you can do in terms of design. Adding uh, clip arts, and I don't even know what all of that is called, borders, and your boxes and all of that to make it look fun and like call out stuff. So do try that.
Hey Simran, I had a question.
Sure.
We have seen a lot of freshers now approaching hiring managers directly on LinkedIn for jobs.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
how do you think
Yes.
they should go about doing it?
So I typically what has happened, like any other social media, even today, like LinkedIn has kind of blown up. So people are very actively posting. Like our own HRs, they kind of actively post on people that they are looking to for the roles that they're looking to hire. The easiest thing would be to, if they posted it on their feed, is to put down a comment or just ping them directly. Like a lot of people, and nowadays all of us have it on the phone, so there's no harm in that. If you can reach out to them directly on LinkedIn, or if you can find maybe a friend or somebody who can help you put in touch with some whoever is hiring, that would be great. Like I still, even today, like I get a lot of people on LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram, all kinds of places who reach out to me saying, is there an opening there, can you refer me for an XYZ position? And most of the times, unless somebody has not been active on the social platforms, they are happy to sort of put you in touch with the right person. But again, if you just keep the easiest thing would be, if you have a certain wish list, you want to work in XYZ companies, you kind of follow or keep track of the HRs that are in those organizations and what they are posting. Preferably add them to your selection list or engage with them, like their posts, whatever, comment on them, and whenever they're posting something you can reach out to them that way. But again, it's a slightly difficult process because obviously there are hundreds of companies and thousands of HR, so it obviously gets harder. But there are like you can very easily reach out to people. I've seen it work for it have worked for me as well. Like I got a job on PhonePe through LinkedIn. I reached out to the lady who leads comms on PhonePe, and she was hiring at that time, and she was well, somehow it just happened. Like she replied to my I sent her a message, and she replied to the message. We got on a call, and it just happened. So might take a little bit of time, but it does
Thank you.
happen.
Thank you so much for
No
this.
worries.
And one more question that I had was, what's the culture like at InterviewPit and Scalar, and how is it for freshers?
It's very chill, yeah. I personally, this is going to be my third year now. I'm in my third year now in the
Mm.
organization. It's very chill. Like both our founders are very approachable. I think that's the best thing about working in slightly smaller organizations because your leadership is very accessible. Otherwise, like if you join something like a Google or a Facebook or an Amazon, they're great organizations to work for sure. It's a great brand name to have, but that sense of connect that is there with the people that have built something, or you have that entire growth phase where there's just a lot happening. There's a lot you can do. Everybody is very accessible. You can
Mm.
talk to anybody. You can share your suggestions. They're very big on work culture, and we have all kinds of, like today is April Fool's Day, and we have a Slack. We use Slack for communication within our teams, and it's like mayhem in our Slack communication. People have changed. They're making jokes with our founders, and it's just like it's crazy. So like it's fun. I know a lot of my friends don't like working for startups, because they feel like it's like a lot of I don't know. There's obviously pressure for sure, and you obviously have to deliver. It's a young company, it's growing. There's a lot happening, but it's very fun. And there's I'm actually probably one of the oldest people in the organization, so the crowd is pretty young and chill. And I'm hoping that I'm not very old. Like I'm just 32, but I'm the oldest person, one of the oldest people here in terms of age. So like the crowd is very young. Everybody is very excited, and there's a lot happening. It's a fun place to be. I would really suggest, like for a lot of you, you should once in your life definitely work in a startup. Like the experience is very different than working in an established organization. The whole vibe is different.
Noted.
Yes. I have a question by Shreya which says, what are some of the questions that you should ask during the interview? Okay, my favorite questions are one of them is, can you tell me a little bit more about while I've gone through the CV, sorry, the JD, but could you help me a little bit more to understand, what would me as in whoever's applying, for the person who's applying, what would my role be like? Who will I be working with? What is the expectation that you have from somebody who joins in that kind of position? That's, I think, is a very important question because it kind of puts a spotlight on the recruiter, where they talk about what do they expect from the thing. This is where things like they expect you to be available on weekends and things like that comes up, because it's a little casual in that sense, and they things like we expect you to work with other teams and blah blah, all of that comes out. So that's one important question to ask more about your role, the team. You can also ask about the team that you're going to be working in. How many people are there? What do they do? How will you fit in there? Another important question you can ask is, what would be your growth like? Like, today you're joining as XYZ. Where do you think, whoever the person is joining in that particular role, how they ask you, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? You can also ask, like, where do you see me in that role, a few years down the line? Where do you see this role or this kind of job opportunity growing? What is there? What is in it for me? It's as basic as that. You can ask that question. There's no, I mean, don't say what is in it for me, but say, ask it in a sense that what can I expect? How do I grow? You can also to ask about learning and development sort of opportunities that are available with the organization. Today Obviously, things are changing so fast, with technology and all of that. So you want to would probably want to understand, will you be trained? If you're told tomorrow you want to learn something that you think is important for your job, will they support you in that? That is one thing. There are other things you can talk about. The other things you can talk about is probably organizational goals. For instance, if I take Scala's example, like we just took a second round of funding in January. So while we are in April, so you can always ask about, I read. So do some Google search before you go in interview, just to see what are the news that is coming on the organization, and then ask questions basis that. So, for instance, the funding piece, like you can ask, okay, Scalar got funded earlier in the year, how's that going? What are your immediate, what do you think, what will you be doing, what kind of money, what is your, plan for growth? You can ask these questions. So basically the idea for you, these kind of questions also help you understand, especially growth related questions actually help you understand, is this organization going in the right direction? Like, are they, do they have a wider vision of what they want to do with the money, or it's like, we'll get VC money and we'll burn it? So that kind of helps you with that also. And it also tells the recruiter that you've done your research, you've read about the organization, you know what they're doing and what they're up to. So that kind of basically stuff around the organization, their goals, your role in the organization, your growth in the organization, about the team, about what else? Yeah, I think that can be two, three, or two or three good questions. That's fine. Even when another thing I think is missed telling you, when there are technical questions that are being asked when in your interview process, please feel free to turn back and ask more questions to understand what are the problems. If they're asking you कि अच्छा हम कल को ये product launch करना है, what will you do? Or get more details, so you can kind of give a more what do you say, informed answer. Like, asking questions is not just limited to about the organization. When the recruiter is asking questions and you're not clear about what they're asking, or you're not sure, you can always turn back and say, I'm not sure, or can you tell me a little bit more? What would you want me to focus on? Rather than I'll ask you a question, you answer, and then we shut up. And then you kind of the best interviews are actually conversations. I read this is something that we talk about in our own like learner community within Scalar also. So try and kind of make it a conversation rather than just them asking the question and you're just hurriedly giving an answer. Like, turn back and ask questions. That's absolutely fine. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so do we have any more
Are there
questions?
any other questions? Sorry, I think, I don't know if it's my internet or everybody else's, but I seem to be breaking up.
I think we don't have any more questions. If if there are any, okay, I guess there are none. So that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you so much, Simran ma'am.
Hi.
It
Sorry, I
was
think my internet is a little messed up.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Can you guys hear me? Sorry. I think my internet's a little messed up. If there are no questions, then I'll probably.
Uh, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Sorry, I think I have some problem with the internet.
No issues. I think we're done with the queries. We can wrap up the session.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much, Simran ma'am.
Sure.
The
You're
presentation was
most welcome.
fantastic. And
Thank
the
you. Thank
tips.
you. I sent my email ID also in case anybody wants to connect with me. You have any questions? You want to join Scalar? Please feel free to reach out. The presentation, it was very like simple, so which is why I don't see a point in sharing it. And I shared the link of that video Please do go through that, especially right before your interviews. It will be helpful. I also go through that. Like we kind of put the whole thing together very recently, but we've been working on this for like many months. So like a lot of people kind of came together to put notes on that one. So it will be helpful. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for having me, and
Thank
all the
you.
best to everybody.
Thank you. Thanks to you too. Thank you
Bye.
everyone
Bye.
for joining in.